It's June in the year 2000. Deus Ex was released. Its open level design, immersive storytelling and meaningful choices made it easily one of the classic games that still influences games today. Today's gaming would be entirely different if Deus Ex was never released.
No, that's what everyone will do. No one will sneak anymore. And I was convinced that they were wrong about that and that it was possible to make a game where you could fight or sneak. And I made a silent vow right then that I was going to show those guys that it was possible. I was going to build another team to do that. And that's one of the reasons Deus Ex exists, out of my frustration with this genius team of people I love who made Thief.
So we got two great
Warren
games.
Spector, director and producer of Deus Ex, is one of the most influential game developers and the creator of immersive sims. You can like Deus Ex like me or not, but one thing is undisputable: its importance for modern gaming and game design. So what the hell does this have to do with Eiyuden Chronicles Rising? As Julia Kristeva theorized for literacy that all texts are a combination of other texts, games are hardly made without influence. Warren Spector himself has a list of his favorite games, and on place 6 is Suikoden, a Japanese fantasy RPG that inspired Deus Ex's approach to choices. Eiyuden Chronicles Rising is made by the creators of Suikoden. In 1995, December 15th, Suikoden released in Japan under the direction of Yoshitaka Murayama and developed and published by Konami. Later Murayama should leave Konami in 2002. In July 2020, he returned with other employees who worked on Suikoden to start a Kickstarter campaign for the release of a spiritual successor, Eiyuden Chronicles Rising: 100 Heroes. Rising is its own game in the same universe and a stretch goal to the main game. I will go more into Suikoden after the story section. For now, as an extended intro, I want to speak about something odd with me and this game. I like Rising. It's strange because on paper this game is absolutely terrible. It has really bad combat, absolutely boring side quests, monotone enemies, super linear progression, in short, something I usually dislike, but I cannot help to like it, and this conflict between my logical and emotional mind led me to make this video about this game. I have another game that's the exact opposite. First I will go into gameplay, then into side missions and town building, and third comes the story. My last 2 points will be the conclusion for this game, which I mixed with the chances it provides for 100 heroes and the problems Suikoden had. Eiyuden Chronicles Rising, which I will shorten to Rising, is a side-scroller. The majority of your time will be spent delving into dungeons. You gather resources and beat enemies. Combat is action-based, but there is very little option to evade or deal damage, because your attacks are just a single button input. There's literally zero skill involved. Instead, your equipment and level will be the indicator for your strength, which is sadly a linear upgrade path. No decision to make here. There's later elemental alignments, but that's a simple stone scissors paper principle that a 5-year-old should be able to solve. You fight against ice, then you equip fire, it's that simple. The most interesting part is when you have up to 3 party members that can chain attacks. Those are vastly powerful, but again not demanding on the player's side. This is all there is to the combat. The side missions consist of fetching specific resources. It makes sense because you help the villagers and new business owners to build and rebuild houses. But it's so boring that at some point I just skipped every side quest text. There's no narrative value. The part that I found interesting on the GOG page was the mix of town building. I think there is a lack of communication on the developer side, because you are not involved with the town building per se. You don't make decisions, instead you solving main quest and side quests will result in the town being rebuilt, so it's an extend reward. I later viewed the development of the town as the main story, and seeing the difference between the rundown shakes and the later mentions is a sight to behold. Nonetheless, there is no town management, which I thought there were and also wish, to be honest. The story was probably the best part about this game. It was not really special, it had some high fantasy tropes, but with the exception of the ending, it was mostly about the interpersonal relationship between the characters and the town, which incorporates low fantasy elements into a high fantasy story, which was appealing. You don't save daughters from monsters, but help an old man get some firewood or build a barn. It was more down to earth. The summary will not stop me from going through the story, mind you. We play as CJ, who comes into the run-down town of Nunavut. I hope I pronounce this correctly. We save Hogan, a local trader, and in a discussion with him we tell him our goal. CJ is a treasure hunter from a long-standing line of the same profession, where it's tradition to come back home when you have found a bigger treasure than your ancestors, which has the intrinsic problem that one day there will be no bigger treasure possible. CJ's father found a giant lens. Those are used for magic and she wants to find a bigger one. The town of Nunavut has ruins where lenses can be found, but does not grant unlimited access to them. We meet Isha, daughter of the last major and acting major, so to speak. To rejuvenate the town, she thought about two ways. You can either pay an absurd amount of money to get access, or collect stamps. You get stamps whenever you help a citizen, aka side or main quests. At some point, CJ becomes kind of obsessed with collecting them. And to be honest, it also affected me a bit. Because we lack the funds, we decide to collect stamps. We gather resources for the citizens in the forest. This will not only give us stamps, but also build new buildings, which will provide new or better services. At one point, Gokto will be introduced by Isha. He's the sort of outlander leader. The reason I draw attention to this is because he will be in 100 Heroes. He's not really important for the story of Rising. CJ, and by extension our goal, for the moment is getting enough stamps so we can get access to the ruin. We talk to Isha and she's willing to let us into the mine. But before that, we want to get better equipment, so we talk to the blacksmith. When we do, we meet a kangaroo person named Garu. I'm not kidding. In this fantasy world there are a lot of animal humanoids, which makes us eating things like bird meat awkward, because we are dealing with literally bird persons. On another note, pig meat is very similar to human meat, so it's maybe just a perspective thing. With Garu we can now destroy large boulders and delve deeper into the mine. Our main character will still be CJ because she's the fastest among the characters. We meet Melor, a young girl who wants to be a magical girl. Which is like me wanting to be a Power Ranger. I was really sure she would be our third party member as a mage, but I was wrong, as you will see. Melor is a bit trigger happy and destroys part of the mine. By the way, everyone calls the mine a quarry, but it's clearly a mine. Sorry to be so pedantic, but a quarry is an open pit. We delve deep into the mine and return via Menhir, which is a teleportation obelisk. We return to the town and get introduced to Eiyuden, a mercenary samurai Isha hired as a bodyguard. On the very original named location, Snow Peak Mountain, we hit a barrier where we need magic to progress. As Melor is otherwise occupied, she has her own adventure group, we ask Isha, who is a capable mage. It was surprising for me because I really didn't thought we get the major as a party member. While we were running through the ruins, we saw a strange man dancing around. I didn't give it much attention because there was nothing to discuss, but now Isha says that it is her father. Her father led an expedition not too long ago into the ruins, but he among others never returned and was presumed dead. Isha is keen on finding out what's going on. It's a bit convenient that only her father returned as a Chippendale, so it gives her the personal motivation to join our group in the long term, but at least there is a personal motivation. As a dancer, his natural power is of course summoning enemies, and we meet him more often. In the ruins there is a strange apparatus that needs a lens to function. We find the lens shortly after in the body of a monster. We activate the apparatus and it's a recording device. The evil sorcerer poses and says that he can finish his experiment, and because he has a giant lens, CJ gets excited and destroys a nearby wall. While the coincidental wall destruction is borderline fine, the recording is not. Who the fuck records himself like that? What kind of 8th grader edgelord do you need to be to make a recording that's just hahaha, I can now finish my experiment? This is written like a video game in 1995, specifically Suikoden, and it breaks my heart that in over 20 years the developers didn't learn anything. Neither about story writing nor about their audience. Rising is written like it's for an age group between 8 and 16. Why its audience is presumably in the majority over 30 years old. First, weird guys like me who just tries this stuff out, and a far larger group is people with nostalgia for Suikoden and or supported the Kickstarter campaign, which means they have a decent available capital, so it's probably a working adult. A kid might not catch on these weird theatrical recordings, but any adult will. It's neither 1995, nor is your audience kids any longer. So please think about your dialogue, character motivation, and how to progress your story in a way that does not rely on chances or illogical behavior. So to make this not just ranting, but constructive criticism, think about the sorcerer as a scientist, which he is in some way. Making recordings for your research would have been better. Not a cringy laugh, but instead a methodical research documentation that will give the same expression. So instead of haha my experiment, how about experiment 1105, the testing on monster subjects does yield promising results. Comparing it to the control group shows a clear progress and future testing will be made with monsters of class 5. We follow the revealed path to another ice area, where we fight a boss. After his defeat, our characters decide to have a rest at the inn, before resuming. Gokto comes to us and informs the group, mainly the major, that bandits are acting up in the area around the town. We agree to help. We go into the forest and hide when the bandits come out. Garou then splits up from us to meet with the bandits, and then the bandits leave. Garou says that he bluffed them into retreating. Most players know at this point that Garou is lying and in some way associated with the bandits. There is first the point that he's a mercenary and he paid the access fee in full, which means that whatever he wants is not money, because that fee was more than most people would make. Later we will make a hot spring inn, and Garou asks us if this could be healing children. At which point I was sure he has a kid. I also thought that it was ill and Garou is in the ruins to search for a cure, and is the leader of the bandits, to which we will come later. Because most players notice these discrepancies, most characters that don't will appear stupid to the player. I often get the feeling that the average player is more intelligent than the average character, and this can be fine, especially if we deal with medieval or fantasy societies. Maybe the game is trying to make the player think that he or she is smart, so you can feel smug or something. Maybe it does work for some, but I get more frustrated by characters. Isha is intelligent and she should see through this. The guard I mentioned earlier, Hugo, sees through this right away, so it's not a full 360 eye roller. But not having the most intelligent characters notice this is the exact same problem with the passage. The plot only works if characters behave irrational or random. In a 20-hour story that should be at most used once to progress the story. We arrive at a magma level and find another recording device, but we have no lens yet. We suspect that is somewhere around here, instead of being found by an adventurer hundreds of years ago, or destroyed by, you know, all the magma. Very luckily we meet Meloa, who has found a lens. We roll a 1 in negotiations and Meloa destroys the bridge as a consequence. We follow her and see her battling a giant lava snake, and her 2 companions turn. We save her and she gives us the lens, which does not fit. The magma flow gets distorted and the volcano erupts, and this creates a hot spring, which leads to the previous mentioned conversations with Garou. We talk with lots of people to convince them to help or accept the hot spring. We get a bit of village politics, because the village elders are very much against everything that's new, including the adventurers. Who would have thought? After some convincing, they agree. There's more to all of this, like developing a specialty for the town, which is charming but not interesting enough to extend this in this video, but shall not go unmentioned. We resume our dungeon crawling and find another recording device, in which Meloa's lens fit. We get another cringy sorcerer recording. He seems to experiment on creating lenses and notes that the magical power of the subject will create bigger lenses. I don't know if this is the only source of lenses in this world or just another one, but it seems they grow in monsters or living beings. If you pay attention, you can see that the sorcerer starts a familiar weird dance as a celebration before the recording stops. We find a journal and return to the town, where the whole picture is revealed. The sorcerer sought better sources with magical abilities and started growing lenses in humans. He sort of breeded these humans, who showed characteristica. First, a natural ability to use magic and blue hair. The sorcerer then often came to harvest the villagers, but one day they turned on him. Isha is the only blue-haired character in the game and also has a lens growing inside of her. If this was on purpose, I think it's a clever use of genre conventions, because in most anime games, characters have the weirdest hairstyles and colors, so I did not even consider her blue hair as odd. Her father did indeed die on an expedition and the sorcerer took over his body. The elder in the village tells us another part of the story. Those with lenses growing into their bodies hardly grow old. They die because of that lens, which shocks the whole party. That's also the reason Isha's father tried so desperately with the expeditions, to find a way to help his daughter. We decide to stop the sorcerer, who does intend to cast a spell to return to his experiments. We do a lot to reactivate an old teleporter inside the old clock tower, and find new ruins, and for some reason the bandits are already there. I left a lot out on politics, because those are mostly not important. It's a side note in this game, which is excellent world building, because it makes the world feel bigger than the creators actually built it. What you need to know at this point is that there is an Imperium that is interested in this region and does underhanded things to get it. And they blackmail Garou with his daughter. His daughter is terminally ill and will die soon, but the Imperials did take her hostage and threaten Garou with her. When the Imperial dog wants Garou to kill CJ and Isha, I could actually imagine his facial expression. This part is really well written from an emotional perspective. He then turns onto the Imperials and wants to get his daughter from their clutches before they return. Some may find this reckless, risking his daughter's life, but I think it's the right choice. They won't stop blackmailing him, and he will not see his daughter until she's dead. Maybe she already is. And they are using an empty promise to make Garou do their bidding. And the only way out for him and his daughter is this risky move. We proceed to the sorcerer and beat him. In a very cringy way, CJ says that we should destroy the lens she came into the town for, to stop the sorcerer's magic, because she already found her treasure, the town and the people. Oh my god. Then we get a time skip and find out that Garou left immediately to save his daughter, which is the best choice, and CJ was not able to follow him, so they wait in Nunavut. This story has low points, but I still like it, especially the low fantasy parts. The sorcery would destroy the village, but there is no world domination or Sauron, but it's about a village and its people. Isha is not healed, but still has the lens inside of her, which will kill her at any time, and she learns to live with this. Garou's daughter will also die of illness, after maybe years or months. It's dark and personal. I kind of love this bittersweet ending. This concludes the story, so let's talk about Suikoden while I show some random footage. Rising was made as a stretch goal to a very successful Kickstarter campaign, and could be the solution for Suikoden's biggest problem and its future successor, 100 Heroes. How do I know it will have this not yet revealed problem? Because it's conceptual. Suikoden was famous for its wide cast of characters, namely 108 recruitable characters. This was the appeal, but you could also guess how deep those characters were. It makes Fallout 4 appear as deep as New Vegas in comparison. This is sadly the reality of production, not just games but everything. All projects are a mix of talent, effort, time and money, and not a single human has endless amount of all four. Most writers only create a handful of characters, because it takes a lot to make them. You might only see 1 or 2 pages, but there may be 10 or even 100 times the amount of written text in the writer's head or notes for that character. Well, at its best at least. But dividing the limited time a game writer has, which is even more complex than just a normal writer, to over 100 characters does not make it feasible for those characters to be well developed. Most of them are probably created systematically. Hair color, style, catchphrase, profession, hobby, name, and go, next character. And then repeat that 100 times. To give more support to my argument, Rabbit and Beer Studios, the developers, consists of 4 people, according to Kickstarter. They also work with Coyote Runners, which has 20 employees, so that makes at most 24 people working on the game. And that makes about 1 or 2 writers. CJ, Isha, Garou and Gokto, as well as Melor, will be among the most developed characters of 100 Heroes, because they got a whole game to shine. And this brings me to the chances Rising provides. Because sure, it's not really realizable to make 100 unique characters with depth in one game. But introducing characters over the span of several games does not only pace it better, but will lead to better characters. I look forward seeing the gang back in 100 Heroes, and that is mostly because of this game and my familiarity with the cast. I hope my concerns are not valid and 100 Heroes will have good characters. I tend to be more pessimistic about predictions because either I get satisfaction of being right or the relief of being wrong, so it's better than false hope. Speaking of, I hope you liked this video. And if you did, maybe give me a like, subscribe or comment. Farewell.